Who is writing the story of our time? When media, money, power, and algorithms shape reality. 1. What we call the news may just be a selected version of reality. Every morning, billions of people wake up and reach for their phones. We scroll through headlines, breaking news, the most important stories of the day. And most of us assume something very simple, that what we are seeing is the world, that this is reality, that these are the events that truly matter. But perhaps, what we are seeing is not the world as it actually is. It is the world after it has been filtered, selected, framed, and amplified through multiple invisible layers of power. Because in the modern age, the most powerful force is not only money, not only military strength, not only political authority. It is also the power to shape the story. Because the one who shapes the story often shapes how millions, even billions of people understand reality. And the real question is, who is writing the story of our time? 2. Setting the stage. Media does not need to lie to shape perception. When people talk about the media, they usually fall into two extremes. Either the media is completely free and neutral, or the media is pure propaganda. But reality is far more subtle than that. In most cases, the media does not need to invent an entirely false reality to influence public perception. It only needs to do something much simpler. Choose what will be seen, choose what will be emphasized, and choose what will quietly fade into silence. That is why if you want to understand power in the modern world, you cannot only look at money or politics. You also have to look at the architecture of information. And that architecture is often shaped by at least 5 powerful forces. 3. How stories are told. The power of selection. The first force lies at the most visible level, but it is also the one most people overlook. It is how stories are chosen and told. Communication scholars have long studied this phenomenon. The media may not tell people what to think, but it has enormous power in deciding what people think about. This may sound simple, but it is a tremendous form of power. Because human attention is limited, no one can follow everything happening in the world. So whatever appears repeatedly before your eyes gradually becomes what you believe is important. Whatever dominates headlines becomes the defining issue of the moment. And whatever is rarely mentioned almost disappears from public consciousness. But that is only part of the story. It is not only about which stories are told, it is also about how those stories are framed. The same event can be described in very different ways. One headline might say, "Protesters demand justice." Another might say, "Crowds disrupt public order." The event may be the same, but the frame changes. And once the frame changes, public perception changes with it. In other words, the power of media often lies not in inventing reality, but in framing reality. 4. Who owns the media? When the loudest speakers belong to a few. The second force lies deeper, not at the level of individual journalists, but at the level of ownership. Many people imagine the media landscape as a vast ocean of independent voices. But in reality, many of the largest and most influential media platforms are concentrated within a relatively small number of corporate structures. Large media conglomerates operate. Television networks, film studios, news channels, streaming platforms. This phenomenon is known as media concentration. This does not mean that every article is dictated by an owner. In fact, that rarely happens in such a crude way. The influence is more subtle. Ownership shapes long-term editorial culture, institutional priorities, the boundaries of acceptable debate, and the topics that are considered comfortable or uncomfortable to explore. When media systems depend on concentrated ownership, diversity of voices may still exist, but the foundational perspectives often remain closer than people realize. The public may see many different logos, many different anchors, many different publications. But behind those logos, the structures of power may be far more interconnected than they appear. 5. Algorithms, the invisible editor of the digital age. If traditional media once had editors, the digital age has created a new one, the algorithm. Today, billions of people no longer encounter news through newspapers or television broadcasts. They encounter it through news feeds, short videos, trending tabs, recommended posts. And in these spaces, algorithms decide what appears, what rises to the top, what spreads across the network, and what quietly disappears. In a world flooded with information, the greatest power is no longer simply producing content. It is controlling the distribution of attention. In that sense, algorithms have become the most powerful editors in human history. 6. Financial structures. Who funds the information machine? The fourth force is simple: money. Media organizations do not operate in a vacuum. They require funding to survive. Advertising, investors, sponsors, financial partners. Where money flows, influence often follows. Certain topics may be safe to explore. Others may become uncomfortable. Not necessarily because someone gives a direct order, but because financial structures create incentives for self-adjustment. And self-adjustment driven by economic pressure is often much harder to notice than overt censorship. 7. Power networks and sources. When information comes from the same ecosystem. The fifth force lies in sources. Journalists cannot be everywhere. They rely on networks of information providers, governments, institutions, experts, think tanks, corporations. These sources do not only provide data, they often provide interpretations of that data. And when many media organizations draw from the same ecosystems of expertise, the resulting narratives can begin to resemble one another. Not necessarily because everyone is coordinating, but because they are drawing water from the same wells. 8. Synthesis. 5 layers of information filtering. When these forces combine, a pattern emerges. Information moves through layers. How stories are framed, who owns the platforms, how algorithms distribute attention, how financial incentives operate, and how networks of sources shape interpretation. By the time reality reaches the public, it has already passed through multiple filters, which means what we see each day is rarely raw reality. It is reality after passing through an architecture of selection. 9. Final. Does this mean we should reject all media? No. Does it mean everything is manipulation? Also no. What it means is something more important. In the modern world, one of the most important skills is no longer simply consuming information. It is understanding the structure behind information. Understanding who tells the story, who funds the system, who amplifies the narrative, and who benefits from it. Because once you begin to see those layers, you stop being just a consumer of news. You begin to see the architecture behind it. And perhaps the most important question is no longer, which news story is true, but rather, what system made these stories the ones I see?